It's the gift that keeps on giving. It's Plymouth Argyle Football Club, folks. Welcome to an emergency podcast where we've actually really not got anything official to talk about. However, I'm fairly sure you've all seen the news by now. Welcome to a special rushed episode of the Green and White podcast brought to you by Argyle. I'm going to try my best over the course of the next hour not to bring up the fish and chip dinner that I've literally just eaten in about 10 minutes. So that I have water on hand and I do have some heartburn tablets just in case things go wrong. As you can probably tell, this wasn't planned. I mean, it was planned, but it wasn't planned to be like this. We had ideas of how we thought this evening was going to go. Fabrizio Romano has put a size 10 boot through those plans. So for those of you who perhaps aren't aware of who Fabrizio Romano
is, actually quite short, I think, in real life. So my guess would be smaller than size 10.
We wouldn't know because he didn't turn up to the Football Content Awards, of which he won a prize at, whereas we were there. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, an hour ago, Fabrizio Romano, renowned world football journalist, he understands that Plymouth Argyle have decided to appoint Miron Muslic as the new head coach to replace Wayne Rooney. A verbal agreement is in place and details will follow, and then it is time to sign. After excellent work at Cercle Brugge, making history for the club, he is in search of a new chapter, and that will be in the West Country at our beloved Plymouth Argyle, thus making history, becoming the first manager outside of the British Isles and the Republic of Ireland to manage Plymouth Argyle Football Club. There's a bit of history that Simon Hallett can tick off the list. And, well, who knows what the future holds. Joining me for the first part of tonight's show to discuss it, John Alsop, who's going to be a constant throughout the next hour, Graham Clark, Nick Saunders-Smith. This is your show. We have absolutely nothing prepared. Of course, we'll go through some details about Miron Muslic. I'm going to try and get that right. I'll perfect it within the next hour. Get your questions in, get your comments in. We're going to show as many as we can. We're going to ask as many as we can, but we are only on until 9 p.m. No further. Graham, without trying to be rude to you, you've seen more of this sort of stuff than we have in terms of managerial searches. You'd have to pay good money to get into Alton Towers to enjoy a roller coaster like today's been as an Argyle fan. Just sum up the emotions from today. Muslic started as favourite, then Shuey was backed off the boards, and it's Muslic.
Or is it? I mean, what it seems like is somebody in the know by the name of Skynet and pafc, who's quite a reliable source in the past, against a renowned football journalist. So we've got two versions. Who's right? I hope and pray that Skynet is right. I really do. But, I mean, credit to the club in one way. They have kept this absolutely secret. Very little slipped out other than the they're interested in 7 candidates, maybe shortlisted 3. It's never been actually confirmed that Shuey's even had an interview. He was at Everton last night, so he's not. Apparently, he's been down in Plymouth because somebody saw these house lights on. That's how desperate we are getting for reliable sources of news. I just can't understand why we would risk everything with somebody we don't know. He may be brilliant, he may be very good, but not mid-season, halfway through a transfer window. With the type of game he plays, high pressing, high energy, physicality, have we got that sort of strength in our team? We just haven't. And it's not something that you can impose on a team.
I'll raise you one more. 3 home games. He's going to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
imagine if he doesn't win any of them because he hasn't got the players to play the style that he wants to go, and he loses the fans within a week.
This is the high. If it is correct, and it's a big if still, and I've got Pasotti on constant refresh just to like everybody else. If he doesn't get at least 6 points out of those 3 games, we're going to be right up against it. And I mean, it's almost an impossible task. Same for Shuey, of course, but then we know if the worst comes to the worst, his track record of getting us out of League One is unbeatable. So we've no idea whether the players can adapt to Music's style of play, or even whether we want them to, because we hear it a lot. This isn't a Danny Roll or Cervantes of QPR. They had 34 and 32 games to implement it, not 22 with 3 in 8 days at home, which will define our season. It's a high risk gamble if we go with Muslic, and it's not for me. I hope and pray that it's Shuey, because I want him back. I think he's our best option in all the circumstances. But until it's official, we don't know.
Those of you who caught the BBC Radio Devon Sport Tonight show at 6 o'clock, just disregard everything I said in conversation with James Vickery. I spent the entire 10 minutes telling everybody about how Stephen Schumacher was going to guide us away from trouble. And James Vickery...
I thought you were the voice of reason, Joe.
That was how he signed off.
I'm the voice of reason.
He signed off.
That's what James Vickery called Joe.
Signed off the interview by saying I was the voice of reason after spending 10 minutes eulogizing about Stephen Schumacher, a man who's not even going to be in our dugout. Nick, were you? I'm trying to remember now. I'm going to get all flustered here. You were in the Schumacher in camp, weren't you?
It's the no, again, assuming he wants it and assuming they could come to a financial agreement. It's the no-brainer of no-brainers. Right? He comes in with the baggage of having left, but with the success of two things. One, having had us in a position to stay up in the Championship, and two, having actually lifted us out of League One, so that if he comes in and it suddenly goes wrong, there'll be a lot more confidence in him to either turn it around later on in the season, or that if we're going down, he's the person who's going to lead us back up. And one of the big problems that Foster had was because he had nothing in the bank with Argyle fans. You had no confidence that if he took us down, he was going to bring us back up. And that was one of the nails in his coffin. And it's going to go the same way for Muslic here, whereby let's get one thing clear. He appears so much more qualified than either Rooney or Foster. He looks like a properly good manager who will have a good career. I don't think that this is the hire for us based on the research that I've been doing in the last day, because no one had heard, let's be honest, no one had heard his name prior to yesterday. Whereas Shuey, you could trust that he would be able to ride out if we'd not won any of those next three. People would have had a bit more patience and a bit more understanding, because we've got a lot more faith in him to do the job based on his previous record at the club. And we'd have more faith in him to take us back off his gun. It'd be much easier to tell the story of this is on first half of the season and Rooney and Shuey needs a bit more time, versus assuming Romano's right, which to be fair, I'm going to assume Romano is right, because why would he wade into Plymouth Argyle's new manager debate with absolutely nothing to gain and everything to lose? But assuming that's right, he's going to go. He'll be head coach for the Oxford game, you'd assume, and he's then got 3 home games in a week, none of which are easy based on former opposition, with what seems like a totally alien tactical plan compared to what we've been doing for the first half of the season, without the tools you would expect him to require based on the previous style of play. What was the club again? Circle? Is it Circle? Circel? I don't know how I'm even pronouncing this here. Can someone fill me in on that?
Cercle Bruges, isn't it?
Cercle.
Right. Yeah, I genuinely have no idea. This must be how Sam feels all the time. Every time we concede a goal, this is how Sam's head must work, because I am gone. I'm absolutely gone. Oh, it's not, but I'm all over the place. Take
John,
it.
We're going to come to some questions in a minute, because there are plenty coming in, and we're nearly 10 minutes in. We already have nearly 3,000 people watching. The last time we did numbers like this was when Wayne Rooney was appointed, and we ended up with more people watching our live stream than there was in the stadium for the Hull City game on the final day of last season. So do share the live stream around, get everybody's questions in, because that's all this show's about. John, I'll come to you for the first question.
Well, can
I
I
mean,
give my overall assessment? Because I feel like
Yeah.
this question, I feel like Nick will do a much better job answering this question than I will, based on I'm sure he's done more research than me, no doubt. I think Graham and Nick, sorry to say this, Joe, are the voices of reason on this, probably. And I would just say, for the avoidance of any doubt, that I agree with Nick that hiring Schumacher back was a no-brainer, contingent on the fact that we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, right? That, he may never have been interested, and this all could be complete nonsense. It's possible the deal was in place and it fell through for some completely understandable reason. We don't know. So I'm prepared until we, get some reporting out of the club, or they actually say something, to give a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there. But yeah, for all the reasons stated, I would have hired Schumacher. But I am going to do a slightly more positive spin on the Muslic appointment, just to contrast with what we've just heard, because I am really excited about it. I think in a world in which Schumacher had never been sacked by Stoke, or was in a different job now, if you told me we were hiring this guy, I'd be really into it. He looks like a proper candidate, a proper manager. His track record is obviously quite limited, because I believe he's only been the manager of Cercle Bruges at a senior level. But he did about as good a job there as one could possibly do. I mean, it's a comparable job, I guess, to what Shuey did at Argyle, albeit in a different league. Yes, the Belgian league is going to be very different to the Championship, but I think that, and we've sort of discussed that concern a little bit when signing players before. I don't know if anyone's aware that a certain member of our squad, who is highly rated by everyone on this podcast, who has played right back for us at times this season, came from a Belgian team in the summer. But I think that's more of a concern for players than for managers, potentially. I think it's the concern I have is more about like pace of game, physicality, things like that, more physical things than coaching, which I think can possibly translate over. I think it could be a comparable level in that sense. I think, as Nick, said, it's clearly different to the Foster and Rooney appointments. I think this guy has a lot more going for him in terms of his track record and in terms of his apparent kind of tactical ability. Yes, it is a huge leap into the unknown. There's no denying that. I do share, and Nick will, I'm sure, come on to this with the answer to the first question. I do share from what I do know about this guy's preferred tactics, some concern, especially going into those three important home games, that it might take time. We should. I think Graham made an excellent point about Danny Ruel and Marty Cifuentes, who were two foreign managers who came into this league last year and transformed Sheffield Wednesday and QPR. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, neither of those managers had a quick start. I can't remember exactly, but Ruel, Sheffield Wednesday, the fans were very supportive because there were signs of improvement, but that was really from being like the worst team in Championship history over 15 games to being a team that was competitive, and then he, stepped them up to being a team that could win a lot of games, and ultimately they stayed up. Still, I think on the final day technically, but fairly comfortably given how adrift they were. So I share Graham's point on that. That being said, though, we're not coming from that far back. Yes, there are fewer games of the season to go, but it's only a 3-point differential at the moment, and we have a game in hand on at least one of the teams down there with us. And also, you could argue that we're in better shape than Sheffield Wednesday in the sense that we have 20 points from 24 games. I mean, that's bad, but it's not catastrophic levels of bad. Obviously, our away form is catastrophic. We all know that, but there is something like to work with. It doesn't necessarily require a big improvement. So just to finish my positive case, I think there's a chance that in those early home games, a new manager bounce, particularly against Oxford, and then QPR at the weekend, I think there's a chance that a sort of generic new manager bounce, which isn't about necessarily having learned the tactics or learned the new style, but just the players are furiously playing for their places, playing to impress the new manager who they don't know a lot about. Just maybe there's a sense of positivity around the place. I think that could be enough to maybe get us some points on the board. I don't think it's necessarily a case of having to master the system straight away. And it's also possible, to be fair to this guy, he's had one job in management. It's possible he's a pragmatist. It's possible he's going to look at our squad and say, well, I can't play the way that I played at Cercle Bruges because we haven't quite got the players for that. It doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be terrible or going to be one-dimensional. I think we have had to, unfortunately, get used in the last year to two managers who were not adaptable, right? Foster and Rooney clearly had their preferred system, and when it didn't work, it was shit or bust, basically. Proper football managers who are really good can learn how to be tactically flexible. Schumacher was pretty flexible tactically. Low could be at times. I think he was a bit less flexible than Shuey, but it's possible this guy is a pragmatist. He knows how to get the best out of different groups of players. He just hasn't demonstrated it yet, and that it might work. So those are my reasons for optimism. I'm certainly not discounting what Graham and Nick said. the final one, actually, just quickly before I stop talking, is that, again, it's just rumours, but some of the other names we were linked with, Anthony Hudson, I believe, was a name that circulated on Twitter. Des Buckingham, who, I'm sorry, to any Oxford fans listening, I would have been absolutely furious if we had appointed Des Buckingham. Not a managerial rate at all, despite his recent track record of achievement in England. I don't think he's it. This for me is just blows those two out of the water, in particular in terms of how exciting it is. So yeah, the final point for optimism is it could be worse.
Is there a point to all of this? And we should remember that his achievement at Cercle Bruges to take them into the European football was quite something from where he inherited that side. Is there something about this that maybe all of our pessimism and disbelief to this is purely because it's a step into the unknown? This is something Plymouth Argyle have never done before. We've never gone to the continent to try and get a new manager.
No, it's not against Shuey. Let's be blunt. If Shuey were completely taken off the table, if today had not been a day full of everyone going, it's Shuey, everyone would have been fine. It's the reaction is purely off the drama of pretty much a metaphorical coronation for our ex-manager. They've been going on for 4 or 5 hours with the odds tumbling, every single in the know Argyle fan backing it, saying it's happening. I saw on Pasotti, I can't remember who it was, Shuey's literally speaking to the players right now. He's addressing them. He's at the hotel, and then they're announcing after. It was signed, sealed, delivered, as far as we're all concerned. I didn't hear a damn thing other than every single person I spoke to. Yeah, I've heard it's Shuey. Gold source, 10 out of 10, Shuey. It's the pure drama of all of us waiting. 5 p.m. coming, and that tweet we were promised of Shuey's here. No, 5 p.m. passes. I can't remember exactly what time it was. And out of the blue, Jesus Christ, honestly, it's nothing has actually happened. He won't be announced tonight, surely. And yet it's a day that's going to go down in Argyle history. It's absolutely insane. It's purely because of the timing. Had Romano tweeted this yesterday,
and it's brilliant. And it's brilliant, by the way.
Yeah, but had Romano tweeted that yesterday rather than saying he's a contender, and he said, I understand he's got the job, there would not have been this reaction. It's purely off the back of Shuey being so close and then the sudden change. Sorry, Graham.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you remember Foster wasn't announced till about 10 o'clock on the Friday night when he had that shadowy interview with Charlie Price? We wondered who the hell he was. So
I think Romano,
it's a little bit of shades of that again.
Romano has said that the paperwork's not done though, right? Romano's tweet was, so unless Romano is in the know but sort of behind the schedule, I would be very surprised if he was confirmed this evening.
Yeah, it looks like way. I mean, I don't know if there's a work permit situation. Nobody's mentioned that. Normally we'll get players from
Nance and Edwards have to take the next 3 games because the work permit takes a week. Something like that.
Well, in a sort of way, I'd be a bit more happier with that because we can all unite behind the two of them and see if we can get the 6 points plus on the board. But the guy's obviously ambitious. He wouldn't be coming over to Plymouth to seek the sort of job in the Championship. Otherwise, he's obviously got a very good agent to get him onto the table at the interview. And then it's down to the interview. And as we know, with the Wayne Rooney situation, the members of the panel that interviewed him were impressed by him the most. So one's assuming that there was an interview process where 2 or more candidates were attending, and then they made their decision on the back of that interview. We don't know what the situation is with Shuey and his Stoke contract, whether he stops getting paid by them if he gets another job, is all that sort of thing to take into account. Whether Argyle would have to pay something towards it or help him, or I don't know. I'm just clutching at straws as to try and understand why it hasn't happened, and it can only be they've been more impressed by the alternative candidate at interview. Because they wouldn't have.
If Simon's watching this and he knows it's Shuey and he's watching us all suffer, then he's a cruel, cruel man. I don't think he is. I just if he's watching, I just want him to know. In fact, if you are watching, could you drop me a message and just let me know? I just need it to be over. To be honest, I just need it to be over. I'm spiraling. I just want to know at this point.
Can I offer an evidence-free theory very quickly? Is there? I'll phrase it in a very speculative way because I really want to stress I have no credentials for this. Is there a case to be made that if you were in Simon Hallett's shoes and you thought this guy was potentially the next hot thing, going to be a serious top European manager, and you've got to look at him, that he is available now and probably won't be in 6 months, or certainly wouldn't want to go back into League One, whereas Steven Schumacher, for all the fact he seems to be linked with every championship job going, I think in all likelihood is probably still going to be on the market unless he takes a job at a club worse than us in 6 months' time. Is there a sense in which, if you're sort of looking to spread risk, you could say, I'm going to take a punt on this guy now, given that there's no guarantee that either manager would keep us up? And if it's a question of, if things go horribly badly, and if it's a question of trying to get out of League One next season, then odds are that either Schumacher or Lowe or one of the two who you'd be more comfortable hiring at that level maybe would still be around and would be minded to take it because they've been out of the game for a while. I'm just speculating. I want to stress I don't know that that's the rationale at all, but that is a rationale that would sort of make some sense to me if you were a risk-taking gambling man, which Simon Hallett is by virtue of his profession.
But John,
can we not?
So I was going to say, if Shuey has been at the interview, and wasn't chosen, I can't see any circumstances where he would consider putting himself through that again. It's not a fallback position. It's now or never for Shuey.
But I don't necessarily think that's true because, if it's the best job he can get in the summer, then it's still the best job he can get, and everyone will swallow their pride and get on with it.
Still being paid by Stoke for, he had a 3-year contract. What's his incentive? His incentive to come here was
getting back in the game.
Belief that he could keep us in the Championship and re-establish himself as a credible Championship manager. If he doesn't get chosen this time, there's no way he'll be back. No way.
I see where you're coming from, but I do think there is a way. I think it's less certain than you do, basically. But I'm not endorsing that course of action. I'm just speculating as to what a reason behind it could be.
The major sympathy I have for Muslic right now is he's not Shuey. That's not his fault. But if something goes wrong, every comparison is going to be to we could have had Shuey, right? This is just driving me slightly. It is part of the reason why Shuey was the obvious choice in terms of it's going to be the one that the fans are going to get behind the most, because he's got to start very, very fast, or it could turn sour very, very quickly, but not necessarily sour at the manager. At this point, if you get 3 managerial hires wrong, which if it starts slow, it's probably going to be perceived to be that way pretty damn quick, it's going to get sour at the board very quickly in a way we haven't seen, is my guess.
But that being said, I think
people in bad moods. I'm in a negative spiral right now.
But I think
I can only see this not working.
I think we're very attuned to what quite online Argyle fans are saying, and I think the majority of Argyle fans who go to games but aren't necessarily very plugged into the conversation around the club, which is fine, of course. Sorry, if that's you, what are you doing? Listen to Argyle Life. I think those people are not going to turn on him after 3 home performances and call for him to go or whatever. I think that a critical mass of the fan base will give him time. There will be loud voices online.
I don't think they'll be booing the manager specifically. But I think there will be booing if we are, how many games will that be? 16 without a win and 10 from safety? I think there will definitely be booing. And I think at that point, the anger will start to be directed upstairs rather than... And then likewise, I feel like the problem is that then, again, this is a purely hypothetical. Beat Oxford and everything, you buy yourself immediately 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks to get another win. It's the risk that... Because how much time, realistically, they're going to have a single day on the training ground together before this very important game for us? Because when you're adding up safety, you need to think of 3 teams going to be below us. And you would be eyeballing Oxford. No, they've had the new manager bounce. There's no guarantee they keep that up. We should still absolutely be looking at this as borderline a 6-pointer. We win this to close the gap to them, to end their new manager bounce, and to hopefully, with the eye on eventually overtaking them, and they're one underneath us to keep us up. I
feel like I'm playing devil's advocate a lot, but isn't it the?
Wow.
Could you not? Yeah, Could you not argue, though, that we're not far off beating Oxford, regardless of who the manager is? Like, if we maintain our level of home performance from the last two, I would expect us to beat them, because we played two teams that are much better than Oxford on paper, and got entertaining score draws with them both. It's not a guarantee, of course. It's not me saying we will beat Oxford, but like, I don't think this is coming into a team that are just negative and terrible across the board. Away from home, yes. But at home, I think that there's a chance that just a shot of confidence from the new manager, or just a sense of like, let's show him what we can do.
Yeah.
Could be enough to win 2 or 3-0. You know, it really could.
None of those results are set in stone. It's purely the hypothetical. Like, when I'm thinking about when you're hiring a manager, you are hiring them for the long term, but also the short term. And I can just see some very obvious ways that this can go downhill very quickly. It's a bit like when we hired Rooney. You can make the exact same arguments with Rooney. Who cares how he did before? He's going to go and keep us up, and then there's not a single problem. Except there were problems, and all those very obvious issues. The reasons why hiring Rooney was a massive risk, because of the baggage comes with him. Like the reason I was so anti-Rooney the whole time, sorry, not the whole time, when we first hired him, is because I could see a very obvious route where it ends sourly. It turns sour and ends very quickly, because there's this very clear and easy narrative to tell of Rooney is not a good enough manager, and therefore when the results start to go south, then all of a sudden it's very easy for people to gather around this. The manager's got to go because the manager's not good enough. In the same way that I think Shuey could have survived that period quite easily, and the fingers get pointed elsewhere. The narrative here is so clear if we don't get off to a strong start. And there's no guarantees we do, especially for all the reasons I've laid out. I won't go over in detail again. That's the thing that I can't get my head around. The narrative is so clear and easy if it goes wrong immediately that piles so much pressure on everything. Sorry, go on, Graham. I think you're about to say something.
Yeah, I was just saying, the interview process. I mean, Simon gave a good interview about how the Wayne Rooney interview process were, and the personality tests and all of that. And it fundamentally failed to address the gut instinct of players. Yes, he was good with the players, but did he have the tactical nous to secure away wins? Up until Blackburn, we were fine. After that, it was a downward spiral, which he couldn't get out of. And this guy, we don't know how he is personality-wise. We don't know how he's going to embrace the players. He's got Monday effectively to prepare for the Oxford game, if he is appointed. I mean, there was a picture circulating that he was at the Stoke game, sat behind Andrew Parkinson, but that would have tested the best to sort of face recognition experts to establish whether it was him or not. But if it was, he's obviously been looking. He would have done all his homework and all the players, seen every video he could possibly see. But he won't know the players. He won't know their strengths and weaknesses. And you can only convey so much information in a short time. It's the highest of high roll gambles. I mean, that's all I can say. And it, to me, and I know Simon reasonably well, it just seems a bit out of character, because his investment, he is a bit contra. He does like being contra sometimes, and that has paid dividends in his professional life. Clearly it has. But this is one hell of a contra decision, if it is the decision. And the longer it goes on and the longer we hear nothing, seems to point that it will be Muslic. That's all I can say. But I just want to say, if it is, we just got to take a sharp intake of breath and support him all that we can, because notwithstanding, I want Championship football here next season. And if he's the man who's picked to deliver it, we've got to give him every encouragement. I'm just a bit fearful. We've got 3 toughish home games, and I saw how quickly the Foster situation deteriorated at home. And I just don't want I don't want that ever to pervade Home Park again, because it was horrendous. So whatever we think, if he is chosen, we've got to give him 100% support, because I don't want to be watching League One football next season, not at all.
Permission to step in and be the host for the first time in about the last 20 minutes. 4,500 people watching live. It really does stagger us, especially given we're actually talking about something that hasn't even been confirmed, and you're sat here watching us. So God knows how many of you will be watching on Sunday night, 8 p.m. we might even talk about the Brentford game at some point, but something tells me we might have other people on to discuss what's going on. Nick, I'm fearful you said you would only give us 20 minutes of your time. We're half an hour in. So I'll throw this one your way, because I sense this is going to be more your forte than perhaps the rest of us. Chris Bailey on X asks, what do we know about Muslic's style and brand of football? We know it's out of Jurgen Klopp's and Thomas Tuchel's school book of pressing, isn't it?
Yes, I know, Aaron. I know you're watching. I know you're listening. I know you said that you didn't want any more slideshows. Tough luck. I got 5 very quick graphs. Very quick. Share screen. Window. We'll just do that one. That'll do. Queue up the data. There we go. Let me full screen that. It's kind of in the way. Don't worry. You're muted. We'll sort it. We got a lovely close up. There we go. So broadly speaking, very, very direct. So this right here, this is last season. This is the season that I can't remember how to pronounce the club. John, what's it called again?
Cercle
Bruges.
Thank you, Cercle. This was last season. The season Cercle finished 5th, qualified for Europe. This is average number of passes completed per game in the league, and that right there, that orange bit, that is Cercle Bruges right there. Fewest completed passes. Again, this is because they are very direct. This is a very direct team. This right here is the percentage of those passes, long passes, 2nd in the league. Very direct. 1 out of 5 passes, boom, they're going long. And this right here is average possession. Again, way towards the bottom of the league. You might be wondering how they can be so far at the bottom for completed passes and yet not completely cut adrift for average possession. That's because when they play these games, tough Aaron. That's because when they play these games, there are fewer passes in general, because they're hitting it long, because there's more contested possession. It means that the other team's completing fewer passes as well. So broadly speaking, in fact, hang on, next one as well. Then this is goalkeepers. These are goalkeepers in the Belgian league last season, and their passing. So the blue line is short passes per game, and the orange line is long passes per game. And you can see that Cercle's, I'm still struggling with that, keeper, most long passes in the division, and by a distance, fewest short passes, averaged less than 2 short passes per game. Connor Hazard is an absolute dreamland. Everything is going long. Everything is flying upfield. Kind of makes you question why we spent money on Grimshaw if this is the route we're going down, because one of the main benefits for him, his short passing out from the back, which we've seen very good, a key part of how Rooney wanted to play, pretty much in the bin. Assuming we stick with this, right? There's no guarantees that there aren't going to be tactical innovations. And while this means direct, it doesn't necessarily mean, he is going to sleep well tonight. While this is direct, that doesn't mean it's not attacking, but it does mean, unless there's a change, very little passing out from the back. Bit of a concern for me, given we teach that all the way through the academy. Anyone who watched the FA Youth Cup tie, passing out the back is something we've been prioritising for about five years now and getting our players good at doing. And we've hired around it too. Seems like that's out the window. There will be lots of counter-pressing. Like, broadly speaking, you're going to see Ian Foster, what he wanted to do was a big high press. It didn't really work so well, and we ended up sitting very deep. But what he wanted to do was high press. This guy's probably going to come in and try to do something very, very similar, where the reason you're going long is that you are playing for the first and second balls and building from there. When opposition teams are building up, you are trying to press them and win it back high. And so you create your chances. Basically, it's anti-possession. It's this idea that having the ball is a weakness, and it's more about taking the ball off your opponent in a higher area. I will stop sharing there.
Can I just say what a brilliant analysis, and has only scared everybody witness after watching that. I've just gone, oh no. Have we got any players that can retain the ball upfield? When we played Bristol City away,
there's no guarantee.
One ball short,
yeah.
We hit every ball long, and we barely got in their penalty area from it.
Yeah, this is my worry. There's no guarantee.
I think we're. Yeah, I think we're scarred from having a manager recently who is an ideologue, basically, or at least did not appear to be very successful when he tried to mix things up, right? Foster, I actually don't think was an ideologue, and this is a debate that I'm willing to, die on this hill. I think Foster was trying to do something quite exciting and just completely failed to execute it. But whatever, like the perception of Foster was that he was an ideologue who played horrible football. There's a chance this guy isn't, and that he'll look at the squad and he'll tailor the style of play accordingly. And he played a certain way at Cercle Bruges because that's what he had available to him. Also, he had
4 transfer windows and changed keeper and striker, and yet still everything went along to a big striker.
Well, then
because someone's already made that point to me.
Well, then maybe he likes to play that way. But
there could be other reasons for that. There could be changes, but right now I would be, if I was putting money anywhere, it would be that the number of short passes completed by our goalkeeper and defence are about to plummet.
Which will please some fans, to be fair, because especially with Conor Hazard back, who seems less assured with the short passing game, we seem to get ourselves into trouble. I mean, even in the FA Youth Cup game, we gave away the second goal appallingly because we tried to play out the area. We went backwards from a free kick in our own half and gave them a tap in. It was unbelievable, and it just shows you how wrong it could go.
I'd stopped watching for 5 minutes because I had flashbacks to watching Rooney in October.
I do just wonder. Again, I'm being the resident optimist this evening, as is often my role here, I guess. I do just wonder if this actually solves a problem with the goalkeeper, though, because I have said on the last couple of match review pods, we've got an issue, which is that with the way we play, the ideal goalkeeper you want is a hybrid of Conor Hazard and Dan Grimshaw. You want Hazard's command of area and shot-stopping ability, and you want Grimshaw with his feet. Well, now, potentially, we don't need Grimshaw's feet, so Hazard is just unquestionably the number one. And he would have to work...
of course.
Yeah, well, Hazard would have to work on his kicking for this to work, right? It sounds like Cercle Bruges' goalkeeper was exceptional at pinging balls on the pitch.
No, it was just a standard goal kick. I don't know why. I don't know why I did this. I watched 2 games of this, one this season and one last season. So it's just straight down the. It's not fancy kicking. It's in the mixer and play for second ball. Like,
it's not like that.
Just imagine Eric Adams again, where you just kick it upfield and you play off. So it wasn't something fancy and some. Stan was trying to convince me maybe it works for Ryan Hardy running off the back. The Ryan Hardy running in off the shoulder thing happened because we passed it short, drew them forward, and then whacked it around the corner. This is literally stick it in the. It's not quite as basic as stick it in the mixer, but it really is play off the second ball, or at least based on what I saw, which was only 2 games. It's play off second ball.
Nick, I'm going to rotate you out because I feel like I feel like
thanks to Adam Forshaw for his services, and I feel like he's been very neglected today, buried under this news, buried like Stephen.
We will be talking about Adam Forshaw, so do stick around watching afterwards. We do have to get to that at some point because there's another story going around involving Plymouth Argyle and Adam Forshaw. Nick, thank you for popping in. We'll see you. We might see you on Sunday. Who knows? I'm hoping that Adam is awake backstage. He's not currently showing his camera, so I'll wait for him to turn it on, and then we'll bring Adam to the party as well. I mean, with you guys talking about Dan Grimshaw might be the number one now, and Conor Hazard being the number one, and Dan Grimshaw won't be, maybe redundant. Maybe with these long balls, we should stick Conor Hazard up front and use him as a bit of a target man. Adam, I'm going to come straight to the questions. I'll give you a question, and then you can feed us your thoughts if you like.
Go for it.
And it's from Jim Houston, who said, by the way, 40 minutes in, 5,000 people are now watching this live stream. If the news at 7 o'clock didn't blow my mind, then I might about to have a medical episode. Jim Houston asked, with Whittaker, Al-Haj, Sissoko, etc., are we set up to play a high intensity press? I don't think they do it as well, and we need to against the quality of sides we're going to face in this league. I'll let you take that one, and then feel free to throw your comments in on potentially our new man Miron Muslic.
Yeah, I'll take that one at face value and then do a classic ramble. Yeah, I think it's absolutely correct. It does not look right now that we have the squads to match what it at least looks like is going to be our new head coach, which is alarming. But that's not necessarily going to mean he's going to fail. I was chilling backstage for the first bit of it. And actually, John, I agreed with a lot of what you said about that. There's a little bit of excitement here as well. This is an unknown. It could well be the case that at previous squads, his one previous squad, that has fallen into that style of play that's been successful for whatever reason, and he'll come and look at the squad that we've got, which doesn't look like it's suited for long ball, which doesn't look like it's suited to a particularly high press. It's going to be totally the opposite, actually, press that we'd be used to under Schumacher in the Championship, where we'd be very keen to keep our shape, try at least to flood the midfield and make us difficult to break down. I'm not expecting that. And are our players suited to it? I mean, hey, Hardy is. Whittaker gets a bad rep for some reason. I'm sure it's something you could absolutely pull off. And there'll be a few others. Callum Wright might feel like he's got a chance to force a claim somehow back into the side after his Argyle career looked just about over at Boxing Day. It could be something that suits him. So, I'm not going to pretend this would be my choice. But compared to the head coach we've had before, compared to the head coach we had before the head coach we had before, this is the most qualified of the three that we've employed. It's at the very least gives me something to hang my hat on. I remember coming on in that podcast you mentioned earlier, Joe, when Rooney had just been appointed, and trying really, really hard actually to find some positives and failing, because it just did not feel like there was anything that I could cling on to at that point to say, yeah, this is going to work. And I mean, you can never know. I'm not going to say I knew Rooney wasn't going to work. I had a suspicion, and so it proves. With here, it's more of an unknown, but I've got something that I can look at and go and say, hey, yeah, this could work. And it's got to. Boy, has it got to. Because again, going back to the reaction when Rooney was employed, it was very much a case of, well, this better work, lads, because if it doesn't, heads are going to have to roll. And by the sounds of it, not that we've had any confirmation 10 days after it was leaked to the press, the director of football's head has rolled as a result of what happened with Rooney, and obviously the head coach went as well. Now, with no director of football in place, if this goes wrong, the heads that are going to have to roll on that are going to be the chief executive. And to be honest, it would not surprise me at all, to agree with what Nick was saying earlier, if there was actually a movement then to push Hallett towards a full sale or put pressure on him there. Because if you go 3 appointments in a row from there that are unsuccessful, when at least 2 of them feel like unnecessary risks, it's got to work or you're in trouble. I admire the chutzpah of the guy, if you want to put it that he's not gone for the very obvious, very safe option, but it was a no-brainer to me. And I suspect, with no basis here, I obviously don't sit in the boardroom, I obviously don't see the conversation, that for this not to have happened, for the very obvious appointment not to have been made, somebody, and it's not necessarily just one person, it could be a few, but somewhere people have failed to put their egos to one side. Whether that's a case that the chairman or the chief executive are currently at the club weren't able to see past what had happened before and weren't able to work towards what looks on paper to be the best hire, I don't know. It could well be the case on the other side, whether Schumacher or his backroom staff weren't quite so, I don't want to use the term apologetic, but didn't recognise the damage that they've done and weren't willing to see past that, and therefore weren't able to make a deal work. Like, somebody somewhere thinks too much of themselves, and I don't know who it is, and I don't know where blame will be apportioned. And hey, this is football, you live and die by the results. If this doesn't work, if we come to the end of next week and we realise that that's 3 home games where we haven't performed in, then the knives will be out for the board. Alternatively, if we have a very good week and there's a feel-good factor back with what sounds in some quarters like a very impressive and exciting head coach, then Hallett will get credit for that, and he'll deserve it. But that's where we are. That's my ramble. And what else can you say other than we wait and see, as we always do?
I think why I'm disposed to give the board a little bit of leeway on this, even though I've been saying for the last week and a half that my priority would just be the least risky appointment possible at this moment, and that is Shuey on paper, and if not, it's someone like Neil Harris or someone like that maybe, it is a properly ambitious appointment. which was not the case, I don't think you can say with Foster or Rooney, right? Rooney was ambitious in certain other ways, but in terms of a footballing appointment, it was not ambitious. The Foster appointment was, if we're being very honest, the opposite of ambition. It seemed like a very cheap option. He was going to get on well with people who were already at the club. So yeah, it's ambitious, and I could applaud that. But then, with the ambition and the risk, as Adam has said, comes a certain need to then be held accountable for that if it does go wrong. I guess that the X factor here, which we haven't really discussed, is the transfer window, which I guess we're going to come on to in terms of outgoings in a minute. But we have made 2 really ambitious signings on paper so far in this window. We've broken our club transfer record for a player who actually is kind of like the player equivalent of Muslic, right? Not someone I necessarily knew a lot about, but like someone who, when you look at his highlights and his CV so far, it actually is very easy to get excited about him very quickly, even though he's coming from a level that's different to the Championship. But it's an ambitious signing. We signed a Polish international, who has an excellent CV on paper. This is a different type of signing, not just a different caliber of signing, but a different type of signing to I think what we're used to seeing from Argyle. So and Hallett's obviously spoken about fronting up some money in lieu of the investment coming in to continue to get ambitious signings through the door. This is a big X factor, right? Because now Muslic has a couple of weeks to work with, potentially more budget than either of the previous 2 managers has had, at least in the short term. He could be able to bring in 2 or 3 players who are linchpins of the sort of football that he wants to play. And it could be, that could be a way of making it successful, maybe not straight away, but relatively quickly. I think it's not like he's coming in on February the 1st and is being told this is the squad you'll be working with. There is some leeway there. Now, again, we don't know. It might well be that the recruitment is sort of already all drawn up on paper and we're pursuing targets and he won't have much to say. That's possible. But it's also possible he does have some ideas and maybe he shared those in the interview process and maybe they were attractive and maybe that was part of what got him the job. There's a lot we don't know at the moment. So I'm prepared to give it, a decent amount of time to see how it kind of looks when all the pieces are in place.
I mean, we're all making an assessment, but nobody's actually heard him speak a word. As far as I know, I've not seen any interview of him, even in English. I don't know.
He speaks English perfectly. I've seen an interview he did previously.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's got language difficulties, but I'm not seeing any interview. I don't know how he comes across. So his first connection with us, if he is appointed, is going to be a really important, persuasive interview. And I just remember watching the interview with a guy at Stoke, I forgot his name now, who followed Shuey, and it was almost the same sort of enthusiasm for all new ideas, etc. And that clearly didn't work out, although he's now number 2 to West Ham. But we've got to give him, if he is appointed, we've got to give him the best of chances, get right behind him. I will be really interested to see how he comes across, because he hasn't got to just convince us. He's got to convince the players and win them over, get their support for what he wants to do. And the timescale for him doing that is impossible. I mean, if he's obviously, again, big if he's appointed, he'll be watching Brentford, but if he's not appointed for a couple of days because of work permits, you won't be able to speak to the players. So we're relying on Joe and Nance to take us forward, possibly into the Oxford game. But just on the interview process, Adam, I mean, I'll go back to what Simon Hallett said, how they selected Wayne Rooney. It was a very corporately structured interview process, and personality test was the bit that really shook me. And they were trying, because the Ian Foster experiment failed, not because of his football ability, but more because of his relationships with people at the club and some of the players. And how are you going to judge that in an interview with somebody who's not familiar with our ways and playing the Championship? I just don't know. He must have had an absolutely stunning and persuasive interview, because both Andrew Parkinson and Simon Hallett and Zach Newton, if he was involved as well, will know the reaction of many fans if Shuey wasn't to be appointed, if he was interviewed and wasn't appointed. They will know. They will have to be 110% certain this is the man to take us forward. And if that is the case, when we take a shot and take a breath, we've got to run with it and give him our support. That's what we're going to do.
We have 10 minutes to go because we are ending the live stream at 9 o'clock tonight. We're not going any further than that. So we're basically going to have a quick fire question round around the group. So as teachers used to say to you in the classroom, if you waffle too long, you're wasting your own time when it comes to answering any questions. However, Dr. Diat on YouTube says, how daft are we all going to look if it's not him as manager? Well, you lot might look daft, not as daft as us, that we've got 5,600 people and we've been podcasting for 50 minutes now about this bloke potentially becoming our new head coach.
And us
So-
not as daft as the world's best football journalist, Fabrizio Romano. So, this is a food
Yeah.
chain, and I don't think we're going to look as daft as him.
Well,
Exactly
I've
right.
just seen some more news just come up. TTNV, the Nigerian Voice, have confirmed Plymouth on the verge of replacing Rooney with Cercle Bruges Miron Muslic. So it's made Nigeria, so it must be right.
There we go.
NigerianVoice.com if you want to read it.
Graham, the first question that we're coming to in the quickfire round is for you. It's from Superintendent on YouTube. Is this a bit like the switch from Ken Brown to Dave Kemp?
Oh, God. I'd actually remember both. I had a lot of affection for Ken Brown. I mean, that's an incredibly accurate metaphor. I had neck strain watching Dave Kemp because the ball was in the air, and it was probably the worst football ever seen in my lifetime at the club. The ball barely touched the ground, and you almost suspected he was growing the pitch longer in the corners to hold the ball up. It was that sort of approach. I hope it isn't. I hope and pray it isn't. I mean, just on the high press thing, one thing under Wayne Rooney we were absolutely hopeless at, particularly away from home, was pressing. So I just struggling to see how that can be turned around quickly. But so there's my answer. I hope and pray it's not Dave Kent reincarnated.
Who should we go to next for the next question? Adam, come to you. Luke Hodge on YouTube asks, do you think he will be bringing a backroom staff with him? Obviously, we know that Nance is in situ. We know that Connor Durbridge is the strength and conditioning coach. We know we've got Daryl Flahaven, who's a goalkeeping coach. What sort of backroom staff shape up do we think we're looking at here?
I wouldn't want to see him limited by the choices that he can make, with perhaps the one exception that I want Kevin Natscott to stay around forever. But I would like to see him have free reign with who he brings in, because we've seen what can happen when that's not the case. We've seen very obviously, this is the Friday before the FA Cup third round, and the Friday before the last FA Cup third round, we brought a head coach in and then waited as long as we possibly could to give him a bit of coaching assistance. I do not want to see that happen again. We can have debates as long as we're definitely going to, about whether this guy's the right guy. But if we're going for him, we've got to back him the whole way. And that extends to, obviously, as Graham said, us in the stands, but it extends to the club as well. If you're bringing this guy in and you want him to be the guy, then you bring him the staff he needs, backroom staff, playing staff, whatever it takes.
Interesting point being made on screen there for the audio listeners from YouTube. Let's not forget this man actually lost his job over a disagreement over player recruitment. I wouldn't hire him and not give him what he wants in terms of staffing. I think this is in terms with a decision where the club didn't allow him to take certain players on a European game to Iceland, wasn't it? And they went out to lose the game. As we have breaking news for you. From Home Park, the white smoke is billowing. Plymouth Argyle.
And it's Stephen Schumacher.
Plymouth Argyle can confirm Neil Warnock as the club. No, it's not. It's not. Plymouth Argyle can confirm Miron Muslic as the club's new head coach on a 3.5-year contract. Muslic was most recently the manager of Cercle Bruges, where he had an impressive record, winning 43 of his 101 games as he took the Belgian side from the lowly domestic position to European football. Highly rated throughout Europe, the 42-year-old also has a reputation for courageous football and developing and nurturing young players. Miron has further management experience at Austrian sides Ried and Floridsdorfer AC. I apologise to supporters of both of those
Great
clubs. I've probably
effort.
butchered your names. Muslic beat off competition from several high-caliber candidates to become Argyle's #1 choice, with the board, and Simon Hallett is delighted to bring him in. He commented, Miron had a clear vision of how he wanted to take Argyle forward and showed a depth of tactical awareness that it made it clear exactly how he wanted the team to set up and play. He comes with glowing reviews from his times at Cercle Brugge, where he took a team from a lowly league position to European football, which is no mean feat. I want to welcome him to the club and look forward to seeing him have an immediate impact on the team. Miron will be in the stands tomorrow for the Emirates FA Cup tie against Brentford alongside Chairman Simon Hallett. First team coach Kevin Nanscoville will form part of Muslic's backroom team with further confirmation of the makeup of his staff in due course. So that goes back to what we were just talking about with Adam. We will have our first chat with our new head coach on Monday, where you can find the exclusive interview on Argyle TV available to all. So, first and foremost, thank you, Argyle's media team, for doing that when we only had 8 minutes left of tonight's show. Really appreciate it. That's the statement. If you do want to read it yourselves, go check out, obviously, Argyle's website and on social media. But we can now confirm, with just 4 minutes to go, I want to wrap up this conversation about Miron Muslic very briefly, because we do have another talking point to come our way, that Miron Muslic has been confirmed as Plymouth Argyle's new head coach on a 3.5-year deal, starting effective basically at full-time tomorrow, I suspect. John, I'll come to you, and then we will round off in style. I know you said you want to extend the program. I'm not sure I have the mental capacity to go any further after a long day at work. But I'll
It's the
come on
fish
to
and
that
chips,
in a
isn't it?
second. It is, yeah. They're getting cold. I need to microwave them. There's a bit more news coming out via Alan Nixon this evening. Obviously, perhaps not the best source compared to Fabrizio Romano, that Adam Forshaw is potentially on his way to Blackburn Rovers. Again, we must add this is just purely speculation at this point. Forshaw, after a tough 12 months in Devon, looks like he's heading to Lancashire. FPL Hayden asks on YouTube, good evening, boys. Love the content on the channel. You're very kind. Wanting to get your opinion on Adam Forshaw, as it looks like we, brackets, Blackburn, are signing him. Sounds like most are happy for him to leave. We have 6,000 people watching. You've got 2 minutes.
Yes.
Was it me or
yeah,
Graham?
can I say he was a disappointment this season. He just didn't seem to have the legs or the extra yard of pace that was necessary. He certainly couldn't do a job with two in midfield. His family are based in Merseyside. It's a good move for him, and I wish him all the best.
John?
Yeah, I think thank him for his service for sure. He was part of a team that, stayed up against, well, not against the odds per se, but, in very difficult circumstances. I'm sure the whole time he's been at the club has been a voice behind the scenes, nurturing younger players. He's one of the few players we have with Premier League experience, one of the few more veteran, one of the relative veterans in the squad, I should say. On the pitch, he played okay sometimes. I think the less said, the better about on the pitch, especially given that he might still be our player at the end of the transfer window. I will just say, and I think this should speak for itself, if he has got to move to Blackburn Rovers, I am gobsmacked, to be honest with you. So yeah, you can take or leave that.
Your namesake?
Yeah, it's back to me being the most embarrassing Adam at Plymouth Argyle, if I wasn't already, after his red card at QPR. Look, it's I agree with all that's been said. It's just interesting how we go through Alan Nixon saying that he's not quite as reliable as some of the others. He's certainly more reliable than a few that have come out of this with egg on their faces. Skynet, mate, like, how's it looking? How's your reputation right now? It's going great, isn't it? KBTS, whoever it was. How's your 5 o'clock appointment, fella? How's that going? No? Okay. I think, it's going to happen again because we are useless as an online fan base at doing this and trying to sort fact from fiction. The in-the-know chance of the third managerial appointment in a row that they have cocked up and know nothing. So I think for things like Adam Forshaw and things like transfers, I'm happy to believe the actual journalists on this one.
Can I just tell you what's gone unnoticed almost is the length of his contract. 3.5 years. That's one hell of a contract. I hope there's suitable break clauses in it, because they must have real faith that he's the man and he's the man for the future, because extended contract means more compensation if somebody decides that he is the man for them, just like Stoke did. But I'm really surprised at the length of that contract, I have to say.
I'm just checking our comments. Are we going past 9 p.m. then? You can end now. Are you all entertained? All right, we'll give you another few minutes. We'll give you another few minutes of our time, because I've heard there's a certain people's champion who is badgering us in the group chat that he wants to put his tuppence in. So we will hang around. We will pamper to Sam down. If any of you guys on the panel want to drop out, feel free. It's been a long day, but we are sticking around for the time being. Argyle do not want me to get any sleep, clearly. So we will stick around. I've seen it, John. Don't worry, I'm fine for a minute. SK on YouTube asks, first ever non-British Irish Argyle manager. That is correct. Before this, the only manager outside of the United Kingdom and the British Isles we had a couple of Irishmen. John Sheridan, the most recent one, who of course played for Ireland. But yes, Bosnian Miron Muslic. If you are just joining us, if you are joining the 6,100 people on tonight's live stream, we kind of expected that there might be a bombshell, but we didn't really think it would happen. We were sort of expecting it maybe tomorrow or Sunday at the latest, but it has come now. So 42-year-old Miron Muslic has signed a 3.5-year deal to be the head coach of Plymouth Argyle, effective immediately. As mentioned in the comments by Jim Houston, still no mention of Neil Dewsnip in that statement. I'm not sure that statement was ever really going to attract comments from Neil Dewsnip. I think it was always going to be Simon Hallett. And obviously, it's probably still a little bit too early to get comments off Miron himself. I presume that the rumours going round, John, that the interviews have been taking place in London. I suspect that tonight there has been a bit of a meet or greet. Again, we're speculating now. I would suspect there's been a meet or greet session going on tonight, hasn't there?
Yep, no idea, Joe, to be honest with you, but probably, given that that'll be where the players are as well. I'm disappointed you didn't do that in your Neil Warnock London voice. So I'll give you a chance.
We're in London, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
We're in London, aren't we?
Very good. Only once was fine. I wanted to come in on the point about his contract length, because I think it opens up an interesting question that I'd be interested to hear Graham's view on particularly, but also Adam's, which is, what is the criterion for success for this guy in the short term? Because I do not think it is, based on that contract length, I don't think it's keeping us up. Unless he's got a relegation clause written into there, which is possible. We know that's a thing that players sometimes have. I wouldn't stretch credulity to think it could be written into a managerial contract. I suspect that Hallett, and this is also based on what Hallett wrote in his club statement the other day, when he said very clearly the criterion for a new manager was exactly the same as it was in the summer under Rooney. It was, we're looking for a manager who has a record of improving teams that he has managed. And I think that was basically it, right? And that was sort of the number one criterion that was mentioned. It was palpably not, we are looking for a manager who will keep us up, shit or bust, or we are looking for a manager who has experience of a championship relegation battle. That was not the criterion. So, if we improve, and we're bottom of the league at the moment, so improvement could look like finishing second bottom potentially, or third bottom, or it could look like staying up pretty comfortably. I don't think we're far enough adrift that we should be relegated by like early April or anything like that, and consider that to be an improvement. But especially away from home, there is an awful lot of room for improvement that could still end up with us getting relegated. So what that contract length says to me, based on just the fact of it, but also what we know about the club and the way it's run, is that Hallett will be thinking to himself, I do not want to sack this guy. I don't want this to be another Foster. I don't want this to be another Rooney. This is not a, if things get difficult, we're going to sack him. It's not a, if we have a plucky go to stay up and we don't stay up and we go down, we're going to sack him. I think we envisage this as the guy who's going to take us down into League One, build a team, we'll be backed over the summer, and we will look to come back stronger. And to be honest, it might be an unpopular opinion, but I don't absolutely hate that. Like, I don't think the metric of success for this guy should be if he keeps us up or not. I would love to think he can. I think we absolutely have a chance to stay up. We're really not that far off safety. This is not a sort of a drift situation, but I can envisage a world in which we go and in which I've seen enough of what I like under him to think he's worth sticking with. And I think that will be the club's plan. I don't think this is a firefighter appointment. I really don't. I think this is an appointment with an eye on the future. And I'm sure that will be maddening to a lot of fans. And I'm sure a lot of fans will think that's insanely risky. And we've had a little bit of that discussion ourselves this evening. But I don't think I can sit here and just fully blame our club for trying to run things in a different way, in a more long-term way, even if it's sometimes at the expense of what seems sensible in the short term. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I think the intention very much is that they want this guy to be here for the long haul, not whatever happens this season, but certainly not dependent on survival. I don't think. Might be interesting what Graham thinks on that.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. The 3.5 years. There will be break clauses, as there always is, but that's a statement of intent that this is a long-term appointment. I think, didn't Shuey get a 3-year plus contract when?
I was just about to jump in. Didn't Foster
Rooney's was 3
and
years,
Rooney?
right?
Yeah.
Wasn't Foster's 3.5 years as well at the
It might,
time?
yeah. So it's a definite plan to. So if anybody comes in, then we get the compensation like we did with Stoke. But there are break clauses in these contracts. The standard manager's contract has break clauses. So I'm sure we didn't cut Foster's 3.5-year wage bill or wages in compensation. So that's a safeguard. But yeah, I agree with John. Now it's appointed. We've got to run with him. We've got to give him our support. And if he is the man to do it a different way, as I said, Simon is a contra thinker to the rest of us, which is why he's done well professionally. And to be fair, he's done really well with us as a club from League Two to where we are now. It's just that he doesn't necessarily follow what I would call football convention, and that's to his credit. It's a high roll gamble I probably wouldn't make, and most fans probably wouldn't. But he's done it. Andrew Parkinson must have been on it as well. Interestingly, presumably no Neil Dewsnip to oversee and chip in from the sidelines, as it were. So it's their appointment, and they've got to run with it, and we've got to be convinced. And start of that conviction, we'll get 6+ points out of the next 3 home games.
I'd like 9.
I'd like 9.
Miron, if you...
We are playing.
We are playing Burnley, yeah.
We are playing Burnley, which has got 0-0 written all over it. But
we played Leicester, so I'll take a 1-0 home win.
But that just shows what Argyle fans can do, and as we did with Hull, it's an unstoppable force when we get behind the team. And now that's what we've got to do. We've got to get behind the team and the manager. We want Championship football. That's what we've got to do.
I have to say that, as Graham alludes to, now that it's done, now that we know it is Miron Muslic, this is our point now as a fan base, that any feelings we had about Schumacher coming in, and I think it's fair to say this podcast was incredibly pro Schumacher without actually waving flags and blowing on whistles and banging drums and putting out statements and banners and things. We were very pro Schumacher. But now that's done, who cares? Miron Muslic is our new man, and that's what we've got to look out for. If you are watching Miron in your lovely London hotel room or wherever it is you're staying this evening before tomorrow's FA Cup game, when those players walk out of that tunnel at the G-Tech tomorrow, just take a look to presumably your right-hand side and just see that full away end. That is what you are going to have week in, week out. It's not going to change. The fan base will be there every single week, getting right behind the team. And that will all start on Tuesday night at home to Oxford after tomorrow's FA Cup tie. Go back to the questions. Richard Sloman asks, when's Ben coming back? Ben's going through a bit of a house change at the moment. So he's been off for a little while. He will be back with us, hopefully, in the coming months and weeks. But as I'm sure all of you will be aware at home, it's very, very stressful when you're doing such a thing. But he will be very grateful that people are asking about him. We do check in on him on a regular basis just to make sure he's okay. He has provided me with all the details of the Predictions League, which I had hoped to be able to give you an update on Sunday night, but now that we're going to be talking about a new head coach with different panelists, I think that might have to be shelved until maybe after Oxford in midweek. John, this one's for you. It's not really a question, but I started it because I want to try and make it into a question. It comes back to the Adam Forshaw point from earlier. Matt Corey said, whoever is appointed, they still need 3 or 4 championship level players. The squad currently isn't good enough. 2 promising players, but we need more in and we need to chef Deadwood out. I said at the time when Rooney was sacked that today was always going to be the deadline for me to be comfortable with us getting somebody. And if it had gone past tonight, I would have been incredibly anxious that we'd wasted too much of the transfer window. It's straight to work after training on Monday for Miron and the recruitment team, isn't it?
Well, yeah. First of all, hi, Matt. Who I know. Yeah, well, we don't really know, I guess, because we don't really know exactly what his role in transfers is going to be. Obviously the existing recruitment team have identified and managed to sign 2, top sort of European, maybe not top European caliber players, but, playing in top leagues elsewhere in Europe, serious players, right? These are serious signings that we've made on paper. And we've done that, before the new manager has come in. So it's possible that all of the targets are kind of listed and we know who we're going after, and the new manager might get a bit of a say in whether he wants to veto a couple of the ones who are less likely to happen or whatever. But I don't know how much of an input he will get to have. Or it might well be that he says, I can't play my system without a goalkeeper who can do X, Y, and Z and a striker who can do X, Y, and Z, and let's get those players in. Obviously, we do have a couple of holes in the squad which we need to fill. I mean, up front is a glaring one. If you discount Ben Wayne, who I think it's safe to say is probably not coming back from his loan to be the striker we need to keep us in the Championship, we have, and you discount Mustafa Bundu, who I think we've all seen is better as a winger, we have one striker on our books who is ours, right? And a player on loan who I think it's fair to say is flattered to deceive a fair amount. So we need a striker anyway. Obviously, we've got Tajani's come back, who's also on loan. He could be one of those players who is revitalised in the second half of the season after a shaky start. It's just so hard to say with him because of the injuries. Could be that the new style of football really suits him as a kind of target man, or it could be it's just not really meant to be for him in his Argyle career. We'll have to wait and see. But I think there will be surely another striker to come in regardless of his fitness status and regardless of how much Muslic fancies him. So, there are holes in the squad. There's an opportunity, I guess, to kind of meld that to his preferred style or what he likes to work with. It's possible he might have a couple of targets who are people he's worked with before. Obviously the club have made it clear that they see the recruitment as a sort of consistent process that goes on somewhat separately to the coaching. But when Foster came in, within a week or two, we had JB and Devine and Phillips all coming in, I believe. Yeah, we've got Beidou who can play up front. But I think that I doubt that Beidou playing up front is the plan, to be honest. To come back to my prior point, you've got, I think JB, Phillips, and Devine were all players who've worked with Foster, right? Unless I'm mistaken. I think all 3 of them had worked with him at England youth levels. So they were players that he was able to get in through contacts very, very quickly. Rooney in the summer, it's a little less clear, but obviously he had worked with Victor Paulsen before at minimum. And I'd be very surprised if that was a complete coincidence that we signed. Well, certainly based on his performances subsequently, I'd be very surprised if that was a pure data signing and it just so happened that Rooney had worked with him. So, yeah, clearly it does look like there's scope for the manager to have input, but the timing and the fact that we've had to be working on the January transfer window for several weeks already might militate against him having too much of a say. Like I said, I think we just don't know. But yeah, I do agree that there's Deadwood in the squad. I think there are a couple of players who I'd be optimistic a good new manager might be able to coach into players who can actually do something for us. I don't think we need necessarily wholesale changes, and January isn't really the time to do that, but yeah, based on the couple we've signed so far and the couple of rumoured outgoings that we have, and obviously Andre Gray is gone, I think the players coming in look to be of a higher calibre than the players going, at least in terms of their current ability, their current fitness levels, etc., etc. So if we can continue that trend for the next couple of weeks, it might not be enough, of course, to stay up, but we put ourselves in a much better position than we were, going into this month.
I'm muted.
There we go.
It's been a long
Fish and
day.
chips,
No
my
matter how many
God.
of these emergency podcasts you do, you never get used to them. If you have just joined us and you have missed the earlier discussion before Miron Muslic was appointed and you wanted to know our reaction to the news that Fabrizio Romano brought us that he was going to be our man, then do catch it available again on YouTube or on X whenever we end tonight's show. Just trying to get back to where we were, really. Adam, I'll leave you this
Sorry,
one
just
to.
one thing quickly. I have a hot take, if I may, from Ben, who has messaged his take on the hire to be read out since he was being demanded in the comments. We don't have him here in person, unfortunately, but he does texts to say that he is much closer to me than to Nick. I'm not sure if I was supposed to read out that bit, but it makes me feel good, so I have. He says, I don't think Shuey was really that safe an appointment. It's not just like picking up where he left off in a number of ways. Muslic has done well with thin and limited squads. No reason he can't adapt to the strengths of the Argyle players. Has infinitely more credibility than the last two hires, if not the championship experience of Rooney, is what Ben has to say. And he'll be back with us soon, he says.
Yep, you certainly can't argue with the latter point of that his body of work coming into this role is significantly greater than anything the last two gentlemen in particular had on a senior first team level. And if it may well have just not worked, a lot of people look at the spell before Bruges where he lost 7 of his 10 games and was sacked pretty quickly. For some people, it just doesn't work at certain clubs. And clearly at Bruges, for the large majority of his spell, it worked. And actually, when you dig deep into their problems last season or earlier this season, whatever it was, that it was just a simple case like we see so often over here in English football. When a team who's not used to European football qualifies for European football, they weren't prepared for it. They couldn't juggle the demands of Thursday night European action and then straight back to the league. That's basically reading what you can find online from Belgium football experts. That's what they attributed it to, was that they weren't ready to demand with the demands of European and then league football. Just to let you know, Sam Down is on the way. I'm delighted to say that John is going to take over from me when the People's Champion arrives, which is very grateful. I'm very grateful to him for that. I'm sure, by the way, if you're not bored of seeing us already, I'll just give you a little plug for what's coming up in the next couple of days. We'll be live on Sunday night, usual time, usual places, discussing the Brentford game. And I'm sure one or two people who we haven't seen for a little while will have their views on Miron Muslic's appointment. And you guessed it, we will probably be on almost every radio station and every local news channel next week as well, discussing the appointment of Miron Muslic. So do stay tuned to all of those as well. Let's go back to the comments. Adam, this one's for you from Tim Coates. What's the sizing like on the Argyle Life merch?
I mean, it fits me, so that's all you need, right? I mean, it's sizing one thing, comfort very much quite another, I think, and both are a huge positive. I mean, if you want to be snug in one of those hoodies that John is expertly managing to model up in the corner there, or I mean, I hear we've got t-shirts. I hear also that Aaron owes a mug. Whoever got closest to the time of the announcement, just before 9 o'clock, wasn't it? Has a mug to give away. So congratulations if it's you. I'm not sure about mug sizings. I'm not sure we're Sports Direct in that regard. But I mean, Tim, in the comments there, I can't speak highly enough of the rest of the merch. I mean, get yourself a deal. I promise you'll not regret it.
If you are looking for Argyle Life merch, argylelife.com/shop. And there are some bits on there you can get, from mugs to beer mats to posters to prints to shirts to hoodies. It's all on there. Bartley asks, People's Champion, when was that decided? That was decided at last year's Argyle Life Awards at the end of last season. A similar award show will be up for you at the end of the year. Black tie event. You are all welcome. It's like the Oscars. Everybody gets a ticket and anybody can win a prize. Let's go through some of these comments and read them out then. Joe B, not me. Never forget how easily Argyle fans are pleased. Ruby and Me says Muslic has now been appointed as our next manager. What else have we got in here? Dr. McCoy33 makes a really good point. No one had heard of Regis Labrie before this year. Seems to be working out for Sunderland.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good point.
You could say the same for Marty Cifuentes. I mean, I hadn't heard of Marty Cifuentes before QPR had appointed him. John, had you heard of Dan Errol?
Oh, of course. Who hadn't heard of Danny Roll? I would also. This is all very nice. I would also like to say no one had ever heard of Andre Brighton-Writer before he took the Huddersfield job last season. These things can go either way. But I did just out of interest look up Roland Cifuentes' experience prior to taking those jobs, and I think on paper Muslic looks, as if not more qualified than
I'd agree.
Maybe not Cifuentes, but Roll had not managed before, right? I think he'd been the Southampton assistant under Hasenhüttl and had worked in the Germany setup, right? But he hadn't actually been a manager. So it's I think he's at least in the same league as those two, right?
It certainly is. Let's have a look. There was another comment I wanted to show on the screen. Andrew Bormas, sorry guys, I missed the start of the show. What formation does the new manager go with? From what we can tell from tacticalanalysis.com or totalfootballanalysis.com, whatever the website's called, it tends to be either a 3-4-3 or a 4-2-3-1 was my reading from the 22-23 season, which basically kind of fits in with the two formations we played this year. So there's no, there's potentially no real hangover period to come from that. Do continue to get your comments and questions in. John's going to try and do his best to learn how to show the comments and start the questions when he comes on to do his bit. Have I got anything else? Start up. Harold Mersland asks, do you ship merch to Norway? I don't know, is the honest answer. Aaron hopefully is still watching. If he's not, when I leave the show in a moment, I will fire Aaron a text message, Harold, and I will try and give you the answer on Sunday night because I'm hosting on Sunday. So I will try and find that out for you. Graham Petrie asks, is Tijani now important to the new season off the back of what Nick said in his analysis piece?
Well, he may be, but of course, I mean, he's not going to be back until the end of this month. He's on the grass, but match fitness, he's going to take some weeks to get up to speed. So I can't see him being any more than an impact sub for a while. I mean, and we just don't know. I mean, what little we've seen of him, if you watch the Cheltenham pre-season game, you'd be thinking he's our man, and then every game since you'd be thinking he isn't. So jury's out. We will have to recruit one, if not two, players to play this new way of this system where we're going to retain the ball high up the pitch. I just can't see it. If that's how he's going to play, that's what we're going to have. And so the recruitment team might have to readjust their thinking a little bit. I mean, I don't know if anybody's noticed. I think there's only 8 transfers in the Championship so far this window when we're 10 days in, which is very, very little activity. So there's going to be a bit of a mad dash in the next, I think it ends the 3rd of Feb, I think it is. So we've got 3 weeks on Monday, I think it is, before it ends. So we've got time, but we're going to have to recruit some different people to play the way he wants to play for sure. Or we think he wants to play.
Most definitely. I can't remember if I've been making a real faux pas all the way through. Miron Muslic is Bosnian. I do hope I haven't been calling him an Austrian manager throughout the course of the evening. He is, of course,
is he not an Austrian
Bosnia.
He's not an Austrian citizen?
Yeah, I think he's
Austrian citizen, but I think he was born in Bosnia, wasn't he?
Yeah,
so
that's right.
we must distinguish the two. Ben says in the comments, I would hope our recruitment is all over strikers. You would suggest that there is probably some work going on behind the scenes. I would suggest that there's going to be plenty of comings and goings in the next 3 weeks or so. Just a heads up, we will be back on deadline day. Another little plug for you. We will be back with another one of our special deadline day shows. Yellow ties at the ready, because Sky Sports didn't trademark that. Here's an interesting one from Richard Sloman. It's one Stephen Schumacher would have liked to have got done last year. Adam, Josh Coburn would almost be perfect for the sort of system we're trying to play here, isn't he?
He's injured.
Yeah,
He's injured though until March, I think.
and I don't know if
Yeah.
Millwall would let him go either. Well, they've got dibs on his loan. Yeah,
And
I
he
mean,
can't play for 3 teams because he's played
but
Middlesbrough,
has he played
Millwall.
for Borough at this
I
point?
think he did.
Okay.
It's normally the League Cup game or Carabao Cup game, possibly.
Every chance, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it links in, I guess, to it's a bit weird that in a couple of weeks we've gone from feeling very comfortable with the striker situation to feeling like we're very short up front. I mean, it's weird how quickly things turn, as today has demonstrated, right? So, yeah, interesting one. Where it's Tijani has the potential, I think you describe it, to help with that. I mean, I don't think. I know we haven't seen the best of him so far based on the limited minutes he's got, but I don't think that should necessarily be a reflection of how he will always be. I think when he comes back and realizes that actually this system is tailored to his needs and we can feed off him for some of our exciting talents like Sissoko and Whittaker coming back in to take advantage of what he's doing, a la Ryan Taylor 2018. It's very, it's got the potential to be very exciting. And I'm not enamored by the football. I'm not enjoying a lot of what I hear. But I look back to what I was saying about 2018 and that run where we've gone from the bottom of the league to the playoffs. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen again, but the most exciting thing you can do is win football matches. And if we're going into a style where
wait till Sam gets here, because I have a feeling he might take issue with that.
Nice. I mean, I look forward to it already. But no, I will say, I mean, some of the best times was in that run with us nearly making the playoffs from being cut adrift. And I don't think it was necessarily the style of football that took us there. I think it was the case we used our strengths to what we did, and it almost saw us through. So Tijani in this system, as much as we haven't seen the best of him so far, can be a strength. And if we can utilize him in that way, and we do get something out of that striker position that we're perhaps not thinking we can at the moment, yeah, I'll be thrilled. I mean, of course, the other option is he'll come back and he'll break his leg or something again, and we'll only see him make one more appearance. That's football, right? That can happen to anyone. But I look at the style and I think, yeah, this is. I mean, we're saying earlier Connor House is going to sleep very well tonight. Mohamed Tijani is going to sleep very, very well tonight. He's suddenly found himself propelled into a key role that he just looked like he'd have no chance of having.
Especially given he's now only 3 weeks away from fitness as well.
Could hardly have been better, right? So I mean, he will be one of the. You always find, and I think John, it may have been you that mentioned earlier. You always find like kind of a player who benefits from new management. There's always like that sort of thing. That he may well be the guy, but of course, this is the game we love, and we can only wait and see.
Yeah, he's kind of one of the ones I meant actually. Who, again, I don't want to judge him on what he's done so far per se, just because we haven't seen a lot of him, but I think what we did see was a bit underwhelming. And yeah, he's one, I think, where it's not a question of like doesn't have the ability or the potential. There is something there. I think there are other players in our squad who I won't name, one of whom we may have discussed before in a little segment about his possible departure, who I think are more on the I'm not sure they're going to get better side of things. I just wanted to say though, like a complaint we've had is just that in recent weeks, since it all went wrong under Rooney, we haven't looked coached at all. We just don't look like we've been coached at all. It's not like we've been badly coached. It's just we look like we're going into games, have no idea what we're doing. And if players do sort of, individual moments of quality or sort of thread a few passes together, that's good and that's welcome. But like, it doesn't appear to be part of a plan. I don't really care. Like, I guess this is how bad things have got. Although again, as I said, we're not adrift or anything. But in recent weeks, in particular, how bad things have got, that I don't really care how we're coached now, particularly. Like, I will start caring about it, but if we could just see some evidence that there is coaching happening and that the players are responding to it and that there is a system and there are tactics and it's like a certain sensible kind of, oh, actually that makes sense, I can see how that slots together, and not just like 11 blokes on a field sort of trying to do their best in the absence of much instruction that makes sense, that will be a breath of fresh air in itself, I think. Like, I know that's an incredibly low expectation to have, but I'm just sort of, I think this guy clearly does have pedigree and caliber as a coach. Whether it'll work or not is a different question, but I don't think you can look at his achievements and think, anything other than there is a real coach in there. So yeah, I'm excited to see what it is, whatever it is, and maybe we'll cross the bridge of whether it's quite right when we come to it. But
Ads
Yeah.
Taylor on screen makes a really good point that Miron's points per game as a manager is 1.44, which widely considered wouldn't be far away from potentially getting us to the points tally that would keep us in the championship. So that's something to look out for. Adam Krieber with a very kind comment that I'm the voice of reason. Many would disagree with you. Let's go through the question. Mike Blackmore asks, the most important thing is, where does Miron Muslic keep his eggs? I'm sure Charlie Price will ask him that question on Monday. Andy says lump ball 1980s style. What else have we got in the comments before I depart? Tom Clark says he will be able to persuade players to come in from all over the world. That was a point that John mentioned earlier, wasn't it? That his pull, he may well be able to get some of these talented players from the continent. You know, we've already seen a couple of them come through with Ibrahim Sissoko. We have high expectations for Michael Beidou, and of course Tim, the Polish left back, as well. We have high expectations from
Joe, who's
him.
Who is that?
Tim Puskach.
I don't know who that is.
I don't know.
What's his full name?
The
Full first and surname,
left
please.
back is going to play. The left back's going to play tomorrow. By Sunday, or at least by Tuesday, I will have perfected the pronunciation of our new left back. I can promise you that. Last but not least, it's 90 minutes. The referee's blown time on my appearance here on the podcast this evening. Kenny Pester asks, what's Joe's words of wisdom going to be when he signs off? Well, good things came to those who wait. Well, we'll have to wait a few months to find out if it was a good thing or not. I am going to leave you in the very capable hands of John for the final 20 minutes or so of the show. And as I exit, we will bring in the People's Champion, as voted by you, the viewers, from last year. Sam Down is waiting backstage. Just a huge thanks before I go to the nearly 6,700 people who are currently still watching us tonight. Monumental effort. Join me again on Sunday with Sam, Adam and John as we dissect Brentford's cup tie and once again go back in on the appointment of Miron Muslic. John, over to you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Here I am as host again, a role I haven't performed in a long time, but mostly I am here with my pint to listen to Sam Down, who has just joined us, have what is sure to be a generational meltdown. Sam, over to you.
It's been quite a day, hasn't it? It's been quite a day. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I just want to try and recap my feelings on the day. I think last night we had pretty much those of us who really wanted Schumacher all pretty much made peace with the fact that it was likely to be Muslic. Fabrizio put the tweet out saying that he'd been spoken to. Now, whilst he didn't say it was a done deal, didn't even say it was an agreed deal, when Fabrizio gives one name and no other name, you know that name is in a pretty good position, right? That he's got that sort of reputation in the game. However, I was still clinging to the fact that he didn't say done deal. So that was that. Then going forward to today, we sort of were still very much waking up this morning with the belief that Muslic was the likely candidate. Suddenly, I had a tidal wave of messages. I've just done an 11-hour shift, so I'm knackered. But I've got my Apple Watch on, so I can see my messages come in. I've had a tidal wave of messages telling me Schumacher's done. It's done. It's been announced. He's done the interview. From some very reliable sources and some perhaps who I think were maybe going on the bandwagon of others. I think there were a very well-known Passotti poster who I won't call out by name, who had previously had a good record, said it was done, and he was wrong as well. So goodness knows what happened. We'd all prepared for Schumacher. Schumacher was as short as 16-1 on. 16-1 on this afternoon. We were all ready for the announcement. We were all ready for, we thought we're going to maybe go to the hotel, meet the players, and then it will come out about 8 or 9. And then came the Fabrizio intervention. Again, I saw it just come up on my watch again when I was in work. All of the group chats once again completely exploded with the news that he broke it. But he actually this time went one further than his previous comment, and he said it was a deal agreed. And then I think within an hour and a half of that tweet, maybe 2 hours at most, the club had confirmed it. quite a shocking day. Not in a negative sense, just an extraordinary day. I think this will go down in history as one of the all-time crazy Plymouth Argyle days, up there with any game, up there with any big event. I'm sure Graham will probably remember just as much as I do all the days of the admin era, like the Guildhall meeting, the Kevin Heaney breakfast. Whilst I don't claim this will quite go down in history as much as those, I don't think it's very far off. Extraordinary. Every time I was on my breaks at work, my phone was going wild. I was having about 10 messages coming a minute, pretty much. It was completely crazy. And then finally come out of work to the news that as of about 8:55 p.m., Muslic had been confirmed as my new manager. John is expecting a meltdown, so I'll try and I'm not going to give a meltdown, but I'm gonna nudge in the general direction of a meltdown for John's entertainment. I wanted Stephen Schumacher. I'm not going to pretend I didn't. I'm not going to pretend that my stomach didn't clench when I saw the Fabrizio tweet, because it did. I thought it was just such a perfect appointment. It was a redemption story. It was a redemption arc. It was a homecoming moment in that respect. I think whatever he did with his departure, I still think he feels a great deal of love and affection for the club and the city. And he knows the team, he knows the league, and it was just, it just felt right. He'd been screwed over a bit by Stoke. We'd been messed around a bit by poor managerial appointments and perhaps the internal culture of the club not being quite as good as it was in some ways. It just seemed like a perfect remarriage. Like we both realised we were better with each other than we were apart. It's kind of how I thought it would play out. For whatever reason, it didn't happen. There are rumours. I think probably the predominant rumour is the rumour about his staff, that Mark Hughes didn't want to work with Argyle, or Argyle didn't want to work with him because of some controversy around when he left. He tried going into the club building when he wasn't meant to, something of that ilk. Elliot Turner.
We should just quickly say that none of that is confirmed, just to be absolutely
no, you're quite right, John. But I did say it was the dominant rumor rather than the truth. But Elliot Turner, of course, with his rather obnoxious celebration and rather obnoxious tweets that he put out. Maybe that didn't go down too well. The rumour is maybe Shuey didn't budge on his backroom staff and Argyle didn't budge on letting the staff come in. And if that is really what's ruined it, I think it's a shame, to be fair, not just on Argyle, also on Shuey. I think it's a shame that there wasn't any compromise that could be found. And, such a, on paper, perfect appointment, we couldn't have found a way around that. It hasn't happened. So my message for people who may not agree, who may think I'm down on the new manager, please, Mr. Muslic, if you are listening, which I'm sure you won't.
Sam, let me come back in a minute, because I was going to ask you this. We had Nick on earlier, and Nick said that he felt that any negative reaction to Muslic among the fan base would be purely because he isn't Schumacher, and obviously all of the things that have happened online today. Just quickly though, the question I'm going to ask you is: pretend for a moment that Stephen Schumacher is still the Stoke manager, or just doesn't exist, or has got a different job, whatever. Was not in the running to be our manager. There was no reasonable expectation he would come back. How would you evaluate this appointment not in isolation? Let's say it was the field of rumoured candidates apart from Schumacher, and he's the one we've ended up with. Can you put yourself in that position and tell us how you feel about it from that hypothetical vantage?
I would feel very excited, and I would think he was the best available candidate. I would feel very excited, and I would feel the best available candidate. And to be honest with you, that is the reason I'm not having a meltdown, because I am quite excited about who we have appointed, despite my frustration at Schumacher, at the fact that we've not hired him for whatever reason it may be. Maybe it was the backroom staff, maybe it was wages, maybe it was budget, maybe even, Simon Hallett perhaps doesn't have the relationship with Schumacher yet to bring him back. We don't know for sure. Whatever the reason, I think it's frustrating, but it's done, and there's no point crying over spilt milk. We've decided to go with it, so I guess we have to get behind Miron Muslic. I think it's a really out of left field appointment. Excuse me, I do apologise. Had this bug going around. Clearly been influenced by, to some extent, Roll, Cifuentes, Labrie at Sunderland. he has got a good record. I mean, if you look at his record, he's only had 3, I think, jobs in senior football. He's had a couple of other jobs in like youth football or training as an assistant coach, but I think only 3 jobs in senior football. One of his first one in the Austrian second division went very well. He then got poached from that job, and he was at some club where he only had 10 games and he won none of them, which doesn't look great. But I think from my vague Googling, they were a bit of a mess around that time generally, and 10 games, it's not a huge amount. But then he went off to become an assistant manager again. He was an assistant elsewhere. And then he got his probably foundational job at Cercle Bruges, if I'm saying that at all right, where he did clearly a fantastic job with them. They were fighting against relegation, and he took them from relegation to the Europa Conference League, where they've not been in, I think, nearly 2 decades, or certainly a very long time.
Well, I'd say they probably haven't been in the Europa Conference League in 2
Not
decades.
at all. No.
On account of it not having existed.
Can you tell I've had a long day? Okay, they've not been in any European competition of any format for nearly 2 decades. Perhaps would be a better way of wording it. Thank you for that correction, John. So, look, there is reason to be excited. He had that very good initial job, clearly a bit of a dud second job for whatever reason at Ried in Ried in Austria. Clearly a bit of a duff job there, but then he clearly developed his knowledge, became an assistant manager, and then went back to the head coach role at Cercle Bruges, and obviously now is coming into his 4th job in football at Plymouth Argyle. I'm still relatively young.
And I would just want to say quickly, I erroneously earlier suggested that Cercle Bruges was his first job in management, or said that he'd only had 1 job. What I really meant was I was aware of the other jobs. That this is the job for which there is kind of good top-level data available. The other ones are a bit murky. If you go on Wikipedia and other scratchy sources, they had not done the level of digging Sam has done into his record of those other clubs. But yeah, one sort of like comparable job, I would say.
Yeah, and that job he did very well. Was there for just over 2 years, and like they took them to Europe, but they'd never been in many years before. So I think, without a doubt, there are reasons to be positive. I'm still struggling with the fact that it wasn't Shuey. Give me a day or 2 to get over it, and I'll be right behind him. I suppose I could touch on the sort of maybe suitability, I guess, is the other factor, because and again, all I'm going to say with this is before anybody laughs at me or mocks me or calls me a purist or whatever, just let me finish my point. Muric is known for a very direct style of play, not in the sense of necessarily it being a deep block or in the sense of it even being defensive style of football, but he's very direct. I saw a fantastic stat last night that somebody sent to me that the Cercle Bruges goalkeeper only had he had the most long passes in the league and the fewest short passes in the league. Perhaps that may have already come up from Nick, I don't know. But anyway, so he loves to go direct. Maybe he's a disciple of Bielsa, where he goes long but in an attacking way. That's not to say that it's Tony Pulis ball or Gareth Ainsworth ball, because it could well be a attacking, high-energy, direct style of football. I think Jurgen Klopp called it heavy metal football, which is a fantastic phrase. So it could be...
And fortunately, there is no record of foreign managers in the Championship saying that they'll play heavy metal football at their club and then leaving them when they were bottom of the league this season. That has not happened at all, to my knowledge. So definitely didn't happen in the Humberside area. So yeah, perfect. What could go wrong?
Yeah, so this
fairness, I find that to be heart attack rather than heavy metal is a key difference, I feel.
Oh, yes, you're right. That was hard to say. Heavy metal football was the new Southampton manager, who has also done really poorly, albeit it's only been 2 or 3 games. So, okay, I stand corrected.
Yeah, so this is what I mean. And both of those examples, Southampton and Hull, they were coming into managers who were a relatively possession-based team, very much so in Russell Martin's case and somewhat so in Liam Rosenior's case. And Wayne Rooney, again, we know he wasn't very good at it, but both he and Steven Schumacher in this league tried to play a broadly possession-based style, and they signed the players for that style. Yes, okay, 1 or 2 players were signed under Foster, but the majority of these lot were signed for a 4-3-3 possession-based style of football. We've now got someone coming in who loves the 3-4-3, heavy metal football, long ball, whatever you want to call it. That's a culture clash, right? So if this appointment had been made in the summer, when we appointed Rooney, I'd have been all for it. Even if we'd have gone down, or even stayed up by 1 point under a caretaker manager, and they left at the end of this season, then I'd have been all for it. So summer 24, summer 25, great, because that summer is a time where you can bring in your manager, he can sign his own players to fit his style of play, and he's got a full pre-season to coach the players in that style of play. Miron Muslic does not have that. He's got to get this team winning and got to get them winning quick or we're going. The Oxford game is on Tuesday. He's going to have, one session on the grass with these lads, maybe two, and he's doing this whole new style of football, whole new formation. That's it's really brave. You can tell Hallett's an investment guy because, and this is not in a derogatory way, he goes for gambles that are very high risk and very high reward. He bet the house on Ian Foster translating his admirable work with youth football to the championship. It didn't pay off. Granted, he maybe not bet the house because granted he sacked him in time and Tuesday kept this up. He then bet the house on Wayne Rooney's terrible record being a construct of unfortunate circumstances. That didn't pay off either. He's now bet the house on a manager who has a very high octane 3-4-3 direct football coming into a 4-3-3 possession-based squad and hitting the ground running. That is brave. That's really brave. And I want to clarify, when I say betting the house, that's a figure of speech. I don't seriously think that he's jeopardising the club financially, because if we go down, we will be financially secure. So I want to clarify that point slightly. That wasn't a suggestion of financial mismanagement, but it's really brave decision making. And I don't think...
So Sam,
it's not the decision I'd have made. It's not the decision I'd have made. Put it that way.
Let me put one more question to you, since you're new on the pod, and so many of our viewers will want to hear your take on this. We had this conversation a little bit earlier, and then I'll come to Graham and Adam maybe just to wrap up. But I made the point earlier that I did not think it was a reasonable. I did not think a reasonable bar of success or definition of success for this guy is keeping us up necessarily. I think it's improving us, and if we go down, it kind of depends on how we go down. But that and the fact that, where he is finding the team at the moment, and the fact he's been handed a 3.5-year contract, even though there will doubtless be break clauses, etc., suggests this is a long-term appointment. So I guess what do you see the kind of criteria for success? Where is the bar basically for him? What does he have to do in his, in the short term, and then I guess if he is to stay for the longer term, what's kind of the benchmark?
To be clear, clearly the target is to survive. Of course it is, because we're only 3 or 4 points off, whatever we are. Clearly, the target is to survive, without a shadow of a doubt. What would be reasonable for him would be if he significantly improves on Rooney and we go down with in the region of 45 to 51 points, then, nobody will say he's done a bad job, because he's inheriting an injury-hit squad with a lot of change. Comment there from Mike Hughes on the screen for our audio listeners said could be comparable to Amorim at Man United. He's come in and wants to bring in a style the players aren't suited to it. Maybe so. This is kind of what my worry is. He may well be a fantastic manager for us in the long run, but really doesn't do the job this season because he's not got the right squad for it. So I think there is that danger. The target is, yes, to at the very least show reasonable signs of improvement, reasonable signs of getting in the right direction, and then failing that, to at least show signs he's starting to implement his style, and then giving him a full summer, he'll have the chance maybe to rebuild in League One if it comes to that. I think the only scenario which I would look at not giving him the summer and going into League One, if it were League One, would be if it was just a total disaster. Like if it was on a par with Rooney points-wise. And you know what? Even then, I would consider giving him the summer if we saw signs that his style was starting to gradually shine through and there was a positive culture and so on. So only if it was as bad as Rooney points-wise or even worse, with no signs of positive improvement, or if there were, rumours coming out about bad culture, any of that, only in that sort of disaster scenario would I decide to get rid of him in the summer. We've got to give him a chance, because what I want to say there is, as much as I've given all those reasons why it couldn't work, let's look at the reasons why it could work. That style of football can be enthralling and exhilarating if it's done well. He does have a fantastic record at Cercle Bruges. He took them from relegation contenders to Europe and was sacked after a little bit of a rush patch, very harshly. If we get, and I've watched a couple of clips of him speaking, by the way, he seems an incredibly charismatic guy. I think our fans, if the results go well, I think our fans could love this guy. He seems so energetic. He bounces around with a smile on his face. whereas Ian Foster, I think, spoke well in a very corporate sense to the media and was very polished. He clearly, the stuff he was saying was very dull and unambitious. Wayne Rooney was the other way around. Wayne Rooney wasn't polished or corporate at all. He ummed and ahed and mumbled and looked at his feet. But the stuff he was saying was actually quite positive, and he got the fans all on side. So they were both in one way good speaker, both in one way bad speaker. Muslic seems very the best of both, and he's very confident and charismatic, and also what he's saying can win people over. So let's look at how it could work. I've had my little sulk, not a meltdown like John was perhaps expecting. I've had my, let's call it, I've had a little sulk. I've got it out my system. I would not have made this appointment. I want to make that quite clear. And if he takes us to the Premier League, I want Simon Hallett to hear that I wouldn't have made the appointment, and he knows better than me. So no pressure.
There we go.
It's not the appointment I made, but it's reason.
We're going to come. So we've got about 10 minutes left here, and then we will sign off for the night. But I want to come to Graham and then Adam, because they have not been involved for a while. The People's Champion, of course, coming to have his say and has had his say. He has. That doesn't make sense. So let's move on. Matt Corey had a comment that came up on screen a couple of moments ago, Graham, which I wanted to put to you, and this was in the context of Sam's comments about the sort of changing system. But Matt replied, but our squad clearly isn't a 4-3-3 possession-based squad, as we're bottom of the league trying to play that way. Do you think there's something to that? Like, on the one hand, you could see the new manager coming in with a completely different style as, oh, crap, we don't have the players for that. The players aren't used to it. I guess also you could see it as kind of a fresh start, right? And a chance to ditch a system that isn't working.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. And can I just say words I'd never thought I would utter? I agree with much of what... No, I am going to say it. I agree with much what the People's Champion has just said, because it reflects how I feel. But in answer to the question, and I know I'm never going to live that comment down, but in answer to the question, I can't imagine he's going to try and change things immediately. We're not going to suddenly switch after one session on the grass, as they call it, to how he wants to play. He's going to have to integrate it over a period of time and adjust it with the players we've got. So if he is the inspirational type of manager that Sam suggested, and I've not heard him speak, but that will help enormously. It will go under the fan base, and if he can pick up a win against Oxford, the momentum would start to build and the belief would start to build. And if we get a win against QPR, it's all about momentum now, and that's why the next 3 games are so critical to our season. And if he can speak well on Monday when he's interviewed, which I'm sure from what Sam said he probably will, and enthuse, and we get the results, we've got the momentum, and I think the way he plays will be less important to us, because in the end of the day, it's results, and not least addressing our away form. So it'd be most interesting. How is he going to get points away when we fundamentally failed? Because we might be all right at home, but we've got to win our away games to stay up. We've got to get points away.
Just to jump in, is there a case that was a big red mark against Schumacher in the recruitment process?
Yeah.
Because don't forget, his away form was pretty bad. Very bad, in fact.
In the Championship.
It
wasn't in League One, to be fair. And we had some great away days in League One. So I think it.
But even then, though, Graham, that was a promotion very much built on home form. I mean, we ended the season very well away, but as a regular away traveller that season, I still didn't see us win anywhere near as often as you would think for a team that got 101 points.
Correct, but Argyle's history is based in being good at home and not that good away. I mean, whether the travel plays a part of that, I don't know. But so I can't see him. He's going to immediately change things, and suddenly Conor Hadder's going to hoof it up to Obafemwe up top, or Beidou up top. I just can't see that. I think it's going to be a slow integration of the style that he wants. That's if he is the quality of coach that we're told that he is. And hopefully we just can't suddenly switch from one to the other. It's got to be a slow integration, and hopefully that's what it will be. But it's about momentum, it's about winning, and if he can achieve that, he'll be all right, and it will be a master stroke from Mr. Hallett and Mr. Parkinson.
Yeah, Adam coming to you with the final substantive question of the night, which came from Ollie on YouTube a few minutes ago. Ollie asks, how will the style affect Whittaker? High pressing and long ball doesn't suit our best player. Seems like a very reasonable question to me. What do you think about that one?
It is, yeah, and particularly pertinent when you consider that there's a candidate out there who we know would get the best out of Morgan Whittaker, who, for whatever reason, has been overlooked. But we've covered that ground more than enough. I do feel there is a way that this could work with him. And I'm going to go back to what I said before about the way that Carey and Lemire has benefited from the Ryan Taylor influence, that a long ball to Whittaker, I think, would be a mistake. A long ball to a centre forward that allows Whittaker to drop into the half spaces and pick up the second balls and have him run at the defence could turn out to be very effective. I see similar as well with the high press. Like Whittaker pressing on his own, I don't think would suit him. Whittaker pressing in as part of a unit that presses high, that covers spaces. I've never got the lazy jibe, for example. That's something, again, that we've been over. I don't agree with that at all. I think if he was part of a coherent pressing unit, he could do it pretty effectively. But all of that assumes that everything comes together. And it's going to be a case that Morgan Whittaker is then a beneficiary of the style, is not necessarily integral to implementing the build-up or something like that. He's going to be on the end of it, and hey, that's where he excels. So I can see a route to it. I do, however, going back to your point, John and Ollie, I believe, who asked the question, that it's a very pertinent thing to think about. That you want your team to be playing. I mean, you want your team to be playing to your players' strengths, full stop. You particularly want it to be playing to your best players' strengths and to get the best out of them. Now, I can see a route to it working, but of course, there are other routes where it doesn't quite come off. It's a line I've used before on this couple of hours, and I'm no doubt use again as we go. But it's one of those things in football. We have to wait and see now, and it's. I'm going to use the same line as actually when Rooney was appointed. There's a difference between supporting something and thinking it's a good idea. I would obviously be very clear that I never thought Rooney was a good idea, and I'm a bit more on board with this one, as much as I think there was a better idea on there. But it's something that I think we can support. We've got something, as I said at the start, to hang our hat on, to get behind, and if it does come together, it's something, to go back to the initial question, could suit Whittaker in a different way to what we saw that it would have done under Schumacher. I think, Sam, you use a very similar way. It's not the choice I'd have made, but I can see the logic. It's not a complete. It's not something that feels inherently like a car crash waiting to happen. And I think the style of play and how it will suit our best players is part of that as well. It can work. It could work. Will it work? Hey, that's what we're going to go to games to find out.
One more thing very quickly I want to jump in and add to that is, what I will say is, if it goes completely wrong, I think that as much as I feel it's a gamble I wouldn't have made, and it's a very big gamble, it is a much more understandable gamble than the last two, without a doubt. And if it goes badly, yes, people will be crying blue murder and calling for the board to go and all the rest of it. And I if it was 3 dreadful appointments in a row, I wouldn't be entirely unsympathetic to that sentiment, but it would be, in isolation, a much more understandable gamble than the last two.
Perfect.
Sorry, John. Again, I'm agreeing with the people's champion. I think I need a lie down. It's my reputation's shot, I'm sure.
We all do after today, I think.
Yeah, but let's get Brentford out of the way. I mean, it almost seems irrelevant at the moment, the Brentford game. Let's hope we can do a Chelsea on Brentford and give a really good performance, and then really focus on Oxford and all the positives that this appointment can bring. And I think that's what we need to focus on now. What's gone is gone. Let's be positive, and let's get behind the decision makers, and hope and pray that it works for us and works for them.
I think that's a great sentiment to end on after the very final question of the night, which is for Sam Down, the trivia champion. Has there ever been another Bosnian manager in the Football League? And I will allow this to be in English football, period, as opposed to just the, divisions 2 to 4.
Go on.
No, go ahead.
I would say first and foremost, I think in his descriptions about him from Fabrizio Romano and most media outlets, I would say that they refer to him as an Austrian manager. He was certainly Bosnian born, but I think
Okay, let's go with Bosnian born then.
Sure. Well, I just think it's a very important point in all the sort of PR. The country you're born in isn't necessarily the country of your nationality. So I think he is clearly, he clearly dual nationality. He's Bosnian born. I just wanted to split hairs on that particular point, but I think he perhaps considers himself more Austrian. He moved there at a very young age.
That's a great way of saying I don't know, but
no, there has not been another Bosnian manager in English football, to my knowledge, unless it is like a low level of like a pub league team where it just happened to be a local Bosnian bloke who's the manager. I am absolutely certain there has not been a Bosnian manager in English professional football, to my knowledge. You know what? I'm struggling to think of the last Austrian manager. I'm sure there will be one.
Hasenhauer.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And Glasner, of course.
Yep.
Yeah,
the closest I can the closest I could get is that Klopp's assistant at Liverpool, Zeljko Buvac, was Bosnian for a few years. But that, I think that is right. So Plymouth Argyle breaking records, achieving firsts and setting precedents truly everywhere we go. We're going to go now because we have been on for 2 hours, which is about an hour and a half longer than our benevolent overlord Aaron Hocking would have liked. We have, I'm sure many of us, an early start to head to Brentford tomorrow, for what promises to be a fun, if potentially humiliating, day out in the third round of the FA Cup. Maybe not humiliating, but no, it should be a great occasion. Our new manager will be there, sat in the director's box, apparently alongside the Argyle powers that be, and then we will see how he gets on in his first games in charge, all at home park, starting with that crunch game against Oxford on Tuesday night. Unlike Joe, I do not have the inside of a Christmas cracker bit of paper to read to you before we log off. So only remains for me to thank our panelists, Joe and Nick, who, of course, were on earlier, Adam, Graham, and belatedly the people's champion, Sam Down. Well, what a day it's been, huh? One that will live in Argyle infamy for sure. And we'll see how it goes from here.
I quickly told John the set, but he's not read the message. There are 7,400 people watching us. It is absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Thank you to every one of you for watching. My head is blown that so many of you find what we have to say interesting. 7,500 unique screens doing this. It's absolutely mad. Thank you so much to all of you.
Cheers.
That's like at least a third of a Wayne Rooney. Good night.
Good night.